Everybody hear me okay? Good morning. My name is Drew Glasbrenner. My call sign's KO4MA. I'm the Vice President of Operations for AMSAT North America, and I bring greetings from the colonies. I'm filling in this morning on last-minute notice, so this first presentation this morning will be about general state of affairs with AMSAT-NA and an update. And then the second presentation this afternoon will focus on Fox satellites. So we'll try not to cross the streams if you don't mind. We'll go over some organizational changes in AMSAT. Our office is relocated. We'll talk about some regulatory changes and organizational concerns, and then we'll have to put a plug in there for the 32nd Space Symposium coming up in October. That'll be AMSAT's 45th anniversary. So the first 4 months of 2014 were a real challenge, and that challenge continues. We suffered a loss with Gould Smith, WA4SXM, retired from AMSAT duties. He was our VP of User Services and a board member for a long time. Anybody that saw the yellow Getting Started handbook last night at the auction, Gould updated that every year before Dayton. He handled the field operations. He was the project manager for CubeSat 2 AirSat, and he was also took care of the Dayton Hamvention, which is a huge event for us. It's probably our biggest event of the year. Unfortunately, he had to step aside due to some medical issues. We're still looking for someone to fill his very large and very well-worn shoes. Even worse, earlier this year, Tony Montero, AA2TX, our Vice President of Engineering, passed away rather suddenly. Tony had done an outstanding job of rebuilding our engineering team, bringing in lots of new blood, lots of new volunteers, and was instrumental in deciding where we were going with the Fox series. He was a board of director member. You could always count on Tony for multiple proceedings, articles for the symposium. He always had good articles in the journal. He was an operator's operator. He was one of my first contacts on satellite back in '92. Had satellite DXCC mainly on LEOs. Hardware and software guy, just outstanding. As a memorial to him, we've engraved this board here is the top board in the Fox stack. It's basically a placeholder between the camera, and this is the cutout for the camera lens. And we've engraved that in memory of him. Our AMSAT office that has been there since I was in diapers was condemned this year. We had ongoing issues with the new owners. Elevators didn't work. Heating was hit or miss. Trash wasn't taken out. It was a disaster. We started looking for a new office in February, and we were planning on moving in June until the condemnation notice was stapled to the door, ordering us to vacate by 30 April. So we sped up our plans and transferred our office down the road to Kensington. We've got Martha all moved in and settled in and got 45 years of documents and pieces and bits of spacecraft long past that have been moved down the road. The address has been updated. There's a new telephone number, although the 1-800 number for those in the States remains the same. And we did all that at as little impact cost-wise as possible. The new rent is not much more than the old rent. This is the 2014 Board of Directors. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. Tom Clark has been there forever. He's our resident curmudgeon, and kind of the corporate memory. And Lou and Joanne and Steve and Barry and Alan and Mark. Two of these were alternates, Joanne and Steve, that stepped up to fill positions vacated by Gould and Tony. So this year we have a rather large ballot for the board of directors that was mailed out earlier this month. It should be getting here to members in Europe now. I got mine last week in the U.S. We have 8 candidates for 3 two-year terms, 1 one-year term to fill Tony's remainder of Tony's term, and then the 5th and 6th place will be the alternates. And those ballots need to be in by September 15th. The address on the envelope is the old address, but it's being forwarded, so you can either send it to that one or put the new address on it, either way. This is our senior leadership team. Barry Baines is our president. Our executive VP slot is currently open and has been for a while. I'm VP of Operations. Jerry Buxton, N0JY in Texas, capably and graciously stepped up and took Tony's position. And has been doing a bang-up job of getting the Fox satellites ready for flight. The VP User Services and VP Marketing slots are also open. We would dearly like to find the right candidate for those positions, and we could use their help right now. VP of Human Spaceflight, Frank Bauer, and Secretary Alan Biddle, Treasurer Keith Baker, and of course Martha is the manager. So overall, we have a vision statement, but basically we're here to keep amateur radio in space. It's just that simple. In 2014, we focused on the Fox 1 engineering, which I'll talk about after lunch, and then the follow-ons to the Fox satellite, or the Fox 1A satellite. We've focused on ARIS. We've had some significant challenges with ARIS due to NASA budget cuts. People that used to help us within the ARIS process from the NASA side are no longer able to do so. So we've had some significant challenges in that area. ARIS is just as large a part of what we do as the actual satellites, the Fox satellites. ITAR, everybody's least favorite topic. We have seen some movement on this year. I'll talk about that in a minute. It's actually good news. It's not the best news we could have, but it's good news. And it's taken a tremendous amount of effort on primarily Barry and Peter Portanova's part. CubeSat licensing, I'm not going to go into that a whole lot, but I do have some slides on that later. We've been working with the FCC to try to straighten out the experimental versus amateur service mess that has been created. We've had some luck with that, but we'll talk about that later. Educational outreach, we're still working on developing lesson plans and material to put forth to use in space education in the classroom. We've had significant issues and made significant progress on our IT infrastructure. The IT team has had some rollover, and we've got a new group in there, and they're doing a great job, and we'll address that. And of course, we're always working to build awareness and support for AMSAT. So, right into ITAR. AMSAT is a munitions supplier. Satellites are the same as rifles, cannons, howitzers, tanks, bombs, jets. If we build them and export them, we have to deal with that. I think everybody here is aware of the problems that ITAR has presented in the last several years. The communication satellites were specifically placed under ITAR by Congress. It is seriously limited to completely killed our ability to work with any other AMSAT organizations on technical matters. The process that was put in place to deal with ITAR is overly onerous and difficult, and I don't blame a single foreign national for not signing a TAA, a technical assistance agreement. I wouldn't do it. But we are a different animal than most satellite providers, especially the commercial providers. Universities share the same problem that we have with ITAR. They woke up to it a little bit later than we did, but now we're starting to see universities be completely ITAR compliant, which leaves foreign nationals out of the education process, and it significantly impacts what each university can do and how they can do it. So we've made a significant effort to try to get changes made to this with some success. One of the quirks of ITAR, if you publish something, it is no longer restricted. It's considered open. Unfortunately, ITAR is stuck in the 80s, and digitally publishing something is not publishing it. It has to be in paper. So we have been doing large data dumps of everything we can to our proceedings. In 2012 and 2013, if you came to the symposium and got to proceedings, they're about 3 times as thick as previous years. That's because it's reams upon reams of technical data on Fox. If we publish it, we can talk about it. So that's been our outlet at this point for being able to make that public record. There's a lot of acronyms in here. My notes down at the bottom. I can't see them. Let's see. DDTC, Defense Directorate Trade Commission, I think it is. I'm sorry, I had notes down at the bottom and I can't see them on the screen. BIS is Bureau of, let me get these right. There we go. Bureau of Industry, and then Directorate of Defense Trade Controls are those two. These are the new bosses in ITAR. So they released right after Dayton last year proposals to move satellites from Department of State to Department of Commerce control out from underneath ITAR and remove them from the munitions list. There would still be export control, but not as munitions. We submitted comments that we would like amateur radio related items completely removed from the munitions list, separate amateur radio and educational satellites from commercial satellites, and exempt amateur radio satellites from deemed exports. That goes from fully ITAR involved to the way it used to be. Unfortunately, they outright rejected that. And here we have a picture here of Peter Portanova, who's been instrumental in this, interfacing with his representative, Peter King, from New York. We went right to the legislators on this one, and it didn't work. So what did happen is that the deemed exports concept is retained. Technical exchange, even if it takes place in the U.S., is still under the microscope. Email, teleconference, face-to-face conversations of a technical nature. What is going to happen when it transfers from ITAR to EAR is that there will not be a requirement for a technical assistance agreement. If we want to talk to, say, AMSAT-UK about a project, we go to EAR, describe what we're going to discuss with AMSAT-UK, and they either grant us or deny us an export license. If they grant it to us, we can talk about it, and we move forward from there. So the requirement for that TAA that says that foreign nationals are going to agree to all the rules of the U.S. is gone. So hopefully this will open up the ability to work again with foreign nationals. I sure hope so. We've also been working with the FCC on the experimental versus amateur satellite licensing issues. The FCC released a public notice back in March of last year that they were the guidance on how to obtain a license, and basically it restricted amateur radio licensing of satellites. And they also asked the satellite advisor to start coordinating experimental license. We all know what came out of that. So we've been working with the league to try to convince the FCC of that some of their assumptions were flawed. We've talked to them a couple of different times, and we've, together with the ARRL and National Science Foundation, we've put together some statements and some arguments. We are not against university CubeSats. We endorse the use of the amateur satellite service by non-commercial university CubeSats. And there's several reasons here that we've listed, how it's mutually beneficial to us. Helps provide more satellites that amateur radio operators can use. There's been a recent increased trend, I believe, in secondary missions in these university CubeSats. I would like to point out that Delphi has flown 2 transponders. There are other secondary missions that are out there. Some of them haven't been activated yet, but they're there. It provides engagement between the universities and the amateur radio community, promotes awareness of amateur radio to university students. At least in the U.S., quite often a amateur radio licensed CubeSat ends up with a whole new flock of licensed operators at that university. That's better than the alternative, because if you look around this room, there's not too many young people around here. We need new blood. This is the way to get it. Quit laughing. It provides an opening for cooperation between the amateur radio community and these people that really could use our help, because a lot of the university projects, they don't know what they're doing with RF. Yeah. I wouldn't quite go to none. University of Michigan's done quite well. I think they're on their 3rd CubeSat and pumping down data for NSF projects. So they're out there. We need to be involved with them, not fighting with them. We keep talking about amateur radio in STEM. STEM doesn't end in grade school or middle school or high school. STEM goes right on through college. And having amateur radio related satellites that students can work on and then take that experience and transfer it into a job with a commercial entity is very powerful. And when those students start working for companies like SpaceX and Orbital and ULA, that's where we start seeing our low friends in high places, as Bob McGuire would say. We're planting seeds down the road. So, that being said, it's expected that these university CubeSats are educational and scientific, not commercial. So as long as we stick to that, AMSAT, the ARRL, and the NSF have agreed that we don't see that as a violation, at least in the U.S., of the pecuniary interest rules. There's already exemptions in the U.S. for transmitting, operating as incidental to your job, not as your full-time job. We believe that this fits under that. So, let me take a drink here. AMSAT and the ARRL met with the FCC back in January. Tony, Dave Sumner, and Barry Baines went down to Washington. FCC had representation from the Amateur Radio Wireless Bureau, the International Bureau, Office of Technology. They discussed the the application of experimental licensing versus amateur radio licensing. We went over the history of them of placing scientific payloads on amateur spacecraft. There's quite a long list there. I'm sure there's several that were missed, but this is just representative. I see the first 3 of these came from right down the road. So there's a long history of scientific investigation on amateur spacecraft. And that continues right up through the Fox satellites, Fox 1A and Fox 1B that I'll talk about after lunch. Both have scientific experiments on them in collaboration with universities. So the FCC did express some concerns that a lot of satellites ended up in the amateur service merely as a convenience. We don't particularly... I don't necessarily disagree with that either. So, tough house today. Tough crowd. We're hoping to shed some light on this to illuminate the issues that's driving some of these projects to the amateur radio license, like taking 4 years to get a license in another service. So let's leave that hot potato behind for a little bit. We'll talk about AMSAT's electronic services. For years and years, AMSAT was a guest on a server at a public university in California, and that limited what we could do, especially in areas of commercial activities. We have now migrated all AMSAT services to a server in Michigan, a commercial server that we pay for. Therefore, we can do what we need to do on it. We've got the pass prediction up and running. There's still some work to do on that. Pass prediction page now automatically adds new satellites whenever they're added to the Keplerian list. There's a lot of back office ARIS support that runs on our server. That's all been transferred over. We've had multiple server attacks in the last 6 months or so, and we've not had any issues with that long term. It's done pretty well, and the new server is pretty well protected. The weekend of Dayton, while everybody was busy buying junk in the flea market, we transferred the AMSAT BB list over to the new server as well. There's been a few burps with that, but we're working through them. Let's talk about AMSAT organizational and financial trends. This is not the cheeriest part of my presentation. Our membership is going down significantly. And there's been some bumps here. I think you could correlate those with a couple of different satellite launches, but for the most part, the trend is continuing downward. There's a lot of different reasons. What type of satellites people are used to, what's available. Generally, the economy has been in the dumper, and $44 a year is not cheap. So that's certainly an issue. You know, I'm not going to make the obvious observation about the population changing and the age of satellite operators. And we're seeing a lot of just general changes in the way people interact with organizations like AMSAT. We have about half as many subscribers to the AMSAT Facebook group as we do to AMSAT BB. Things are shifting. Old services are becoming even older. We have 5,000 followers on Twitter. We only have 3,000 members. So there's a lot of people out there that are interested in AMSAT but haven't come to the point to decide to join yet. And that's something that we have to continue to work on. Excuse me. So, membership income isn't covering the expenses anymore. This is a huge problem. We have worked several different ways to cut expenses, move things around without being drastic. But we need a lot of new members in order for the membership dollars to support the organization, or we need to continue cutting things in the organization. We're looking at an operating deficit in 2014, which means we'll be dipping into our reserves again. We've also dipped into our reserves to start the process of the Fox 1C launch. So we'll be looking at beating the drum quite hard to raise some money during 2014. And we have to grow the membership. That's absolutely critical. So how can AMSAT members help? Well, first of all, you can be a member of AMSAT. And you can talk your friends into being a member of AMSAT if they're interested in satellites. Our projects are multi-year projects. We rarely complete anything in a year. So, excuse me, support has to be ongoing. It's not send in $10 and it's done. It's not enough. Donate to our capital campaign for our projects, and continue to donate to them if you can. Get out and use the existing satellites. How many people in this room have made a contact in the last week on a satellite? 4 out of what? 30, 40 people? How about the last month? Maybe a third, quarter to a third. Anybody here not made a contact in the last year? Yeah, about a third. That's yeah. Your distance trumps it all, though. I think communicating with a 36-year-old NASA satellite definitely counts. I won't even ask you that question again. Get out there and use the satellites. People seem to get into tracks of what satellite, what particular mode they like to work. I guess I'm just greedy because I'll work them all. Digital, FM, transponder. Get out there and make some contacts. Take an HT with you next time you go out to the park for a picnic. Program some downlinks into your car radio. I listened to AO73 the other day driving to Dayton at 11 o'clock at night, just tuning around. It's just that easy. Get involved. And that interest is viral. People see you having fun with satellites. They're going to want to have fun with satellites too. Write articles for the journal. We're always looking for journal articles. If English is not your mother tongue, we will find somebody to help you proofread your articles. Articles in German are easy. I'll bribe my wife to translate them. We really would like to hear input from other areas as well. And last, if you see a need in AMSAT, volunteer your time and help fill it. This is kind of the wrong crowd here, but we're encouraging people back home to go to their local ham club meetings and local ham fests and talk about AMSAT. And you can do that for your local AMSATs too. So, upcoming events. This year's our 45th anniversary. We're back in Baltimore this year. For those of you not familiar, Baltimore's just outside the Washington, D.C. area, so you can combine visits if you want. That's go down and see some of the monuments and things there. The 10th, 11th, and 12th of October, we're at the Doubletree Inn by Hilton at the BWI Airport. Nice right there next to the airport. Get in and out. No problems with transportation. $99 a night. That's like what? 30 pounds? Seems like it. I can promise you won't pay $54 for a weekend of Wi-Fi. It's free. And the breakfast buffet coupons are $10, but they probably won't be as good as the breakfast here. Frank Bauer's the chairman, and he's done several of these for us before, so if you've been to one of Frank's one of the symposiums that Frank put together. You know, he does a bang-up job. And normally everybody at least wins something. That's the thing I always remember about Frank's symposiums. So you can go online to the AMSAT store and sign up there. If you really want to, you can dispatch a letter on a ship to Martha, and she'll get you signed up too. But come on over and help us celebrate AMSAT's 45th anniversary in the second week of October. I'm almost hesitant to do this, but any questions?
Hello? Right.
We got one back there in the back.
Okay, it's actually one from the internet, from a fellow Dutchman, Papa Echo 1 Charlie Hotel Lima. He's commenting basically on the way of donating money. Can you make it easier to donate money by not signing up to PayPal, but in another means? Can you comment maybe on the way that people can help out that don't do PayPal?
You can donate through PayPal with your credit card without signing up for PayPal. You can also call Martha and give her your credit card number, and she can do it that way. You can send a check, although I don't know how that would work on foreign funds. Probably not.
Yeah, the trouble with PayPal in Holland, and I have the same issue, is that you have to sign up. The credit card payment without signing up is not available in Holland. And some countries do, some countries don't.
I wonder if you could use a proxy.
Probably. Yeah, I'm checking if there's any other on the internet.
But he could absolutely call Martha and arrange it that way.
All right, I think that answers the question.
And thank you for your support.
Okay, do we have any from the floor?
Going.
All right.
Sold.
Thank you very much for the talk and the update on that. I think the membership is everywhere.